Oh no, he should be off shift by now, I imagine.
Oh.
Yeah, he's off.
John.
He probably has nothing to do on his commute back.
There we go.
We're live.
We're live.
Redirecting to the YouTube.
The tubes.
The YouTube.
Tubes.
The tubes. Where are the tubes?
Okay. Where are the questions I sent?
They were great
What's
questions.
the name of this episode?
I didn't really try that hard. So it's named Young Adult Community.
My goodness.
I
So,
love it.
hold on. Sorry. I can't hear anything you guys are about to say because, okay, there we go. Cool. Okay. So guys, what's up? What'd you guys do this weekend?
I
just
drank
wondering.
beer and watched Peter fix my bike.
Nice.
That was like the best like dude date I've ever been on.
Yeah. It's so fun. You're so
Yeah, we
nice.
just like polished the motorcycle. It was so good.
Is it the one sitting behind you right now?
Yelled
No,
at
that's
kids.
I don't know. Is Peter frozen?
Oh yeah, the other kids. Yes. Hold on. Let's see. His is no, he's back there. That's his bike, right there. It's nice.
Oh, he's
Oh,
showing
we
us
missed
Zach's
it.
bike.
We missed it entirely.
Oh, because
Yeah,
it
we
was
missed
frozen.
it totally.
Oh no, dang it.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Oh, well.
It'll
That's
be a
all
better
right.
reveal
I'll
when
pull
I-
it out at the end so you can all see it. And it's
Perfect.
when I-
It's
Yeah,
Zach should
slide
go over
out
there at
off
the
front
end
of
and
the
like,
church.
When he rides off into the sunset.
yeah,
When I
that's
crash into a
perfect.
car in front of everybody.
All right, cool. So does anyone want to pray?
No, just kidding.
Oh, well, in that case, I guess we won't. No?
No, we're going to. You will
Just-
pray, please.
Oh, I'm going to pray? Oh, okay. Great. All right. In the name of the Father, and the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Come, Holy Spirit. Lord, thank you so much for this opportunity for all of us to come together on this live stream and talk about you and talk about the community that you help us build so that we can glorify you, not just alone, but together as well. We ask you to enter into our conversation and fill us with the truth that you want us to share with other people and that you want us to share with each other. Enter into our words and our thoughts. And we ask that you just, continue to bless us with this podcast, continue to bless us over the next few weeks as we take a break and think about how we're going to, move forward with this fun project that we've created with you. And in Our Lady's name, we ask for her intercession. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
St. Lawrence.
Pray for
Amen. Pray for
us.
us. Nice.
Turn me over. I am done on this side.
Isn't he like the patron saint of barbecues?
He better be. If not, that's
True.
That's a B.
He's the like patron saint of like grilling or something.
That's
I think
awesome.
so, yeah.
Yes, he should.
And jokes, evidently.
Yes.
And jokes. Is that true? Is he really the patron saint of jokes?
You know,
Well, he should
I'll
be.
check it real quick, but yeah, I'm almost.
I think that might be. I think you might be right. I think that
There
might be
actually
true.
is a Saint Hilarious. I mean,
Is that true as well? There's a
It's-
Saint
it's-
Hilarious.
it's spelled differently. It's spelled like the Roman, like IUS, but
Well,
anyway.
but
Yeah.
fun
Still
fact:
pretty
the
funny.
more you know. So, we are talking about young adult community, which I really feel like is a great topic for us to end season 1 of TCI, because that's kind of what started this whole thing. And that's how we all know each other, through the young adult community at St. Alphonsus, generally speaking, I would say, right? Maybe. Yeah. So yeah, I think like Ephrem and I had a great conversation about this yesterday. This was actually a topic Ephrem wanted to use for men's group, but I stole it. So now we're using it for
good.
this.
We can actually have a productive topic and come up with some good conclusions. So
Now I have to find a different topic for men's group.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, it's not going to make a difference. We're just going to roast each other the whole time. But
So we talked for a long time yesterday just about, and we've talked before about like the transparent, why did I use that word? The temporary nature of young adult community. Like we all know a lot of people who were at one time very active in our community and have since like moved on with their lives. They're either, I mean, even like the seminarians, I mean, I even feel like with you guys, we could say like you were super active in young adult community and then now you're pursuing your vocation. And so granted, you're still active and you're
priorities, you know?
Yeah, you know,
Ridiculous.
They traded us in for the better deal. No, but seriously. So just like the temporary nature of young adult community and like, how do we do Catholic community as single? Many of us are single. Obviously, I think a lot of the ones who are not move into marriage or, you know, pursue their whatever other vocation they have. How do we do that in a way that's actually productive and actually encourages us to pursue our vocation as opposed to just kind of getting complacent and comfortable in that phase of life or that state of life? So I think there's like a lot that we could say here. But I guess to sort of, you know, generally speaking, head into it as we do, why is community even important in the first place? You know, like, why is this something that all of us, I think I could say pretty confidently that each of us feel strongly about the need for good community, largely because we've experienced it. So why is it important? Why does it matter?
And I would say it's not like more important as a young adult, but I think it's more important to intentionally establish it, because I think being a young adult is hard. Especially when you just graduate college, you go from this environment where, you know, you always have friends around you. You can go down the hall and like knock on someone's door and be like, hey, you want to go play basketball? And, you know, you have this, you know, kind of like preset environment with all these relationships. And now you move out on your own into the big bad world, and, you know, you don't have that anymore. And so you have to be really intentional about forming relationships. And it's hard to have like deep friendships. Mm-hmm. So I think just, you know, as a Catholic young adult, like when I moved here, it was so huge for me, and it was hard. I had to work at it. Like when I moved to Chicago, I didn't know anybody. I started out by just like following every Catholic young adult group on Facebook, like in the city of Chicago, until I came to St. Alphonsus and I found out that, you know, I liked being here. So, yeah, I will just say, like, I think as a young adult, it's hard. And that's why I think it's just such a blessing what we have here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can confidently say that without community in the Catholic context, I would certainly not be in seminary. I don't even know if I would be Catholic, to be honest, or at least, you know, moderately Catholic. I mean, from getting into it in high school to continuing it in college, as sometimes as unorthodox as that was at Michigan, into not having it when I first had my first job out of college, and it just being really draining. And then finding it when I got back to Chicago at St. Alphonsus. And then, I mean, at seminary, it's just, you know, more of that almost, you know, kind of intensified a little bit. So, I mean, I don't know if I can, I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of awesome quotes out there that are not coming to mind of like, you know, why community is important, but it's just, I mean, we're made for relationship. And so what better relationship is there than the one that's built on Christ and towards moving together towards Christ with each other? I mean, moving as a group and having those relationships mutually bring each other to Christ. I mean, I can't think of a better, you know, form of friendship. I mean, that's, you know, again, marriage is that, just again, some different things there, but I mean, you're both pulling each other towards Christ. So, I mean, community is, I find it to be possibly, you know, maybe outside of prayer, the most essential thing for the Christian life.
St. Benedict says something similar in his rule. In the very beginning, it talks about the different types of people and says very few people are called to hermitage. Most people are called to some type of community, and maybe that will look differently. But there's a purpose for it. It's because it's hard to do the Christian thing on your own, and just kind of like hold fast to the rules. Like, no, we need people supporting us and helping us along the way. It's very hard to do this on your own without somebody who's also in the fight with you and who's like encouraging you and correcting you too. That's one of the beautiful things about St. Alphonsus is like the incredible community that we have. It's not just like, oh, let's get together and just like have popcorn and beer and something and then whatever. It's like, no, we actually hold each other to development in a life of holiness. And Aristotle also said something, and now it's all my philosophy is now that I'm a master of philosophy.
Hey, you're a theologian now. The philosophy's done. Just jumping out the back of your head.
Friendship was important to Aristotle. I don't know. Friendship's not a virtue, I don't think, but it's something that he held in high regard, and he like classified the 3 different types of friends. But like it for that very purpose of help and support and correction, especially as young adults too, because there are so many like off influences in our lives, especially coming out of college, going right into the working world, and especially when you're young. There's a lot of emphasis on, like, as Dan says when he worked at Deloitte, like putting in the hours. The young people, they put in the hours, they do the hard work, and that can have kind of that like emphasis on work can have a negative influence on us and lead us to value the wrong things. But having that community always snaps us back to reality, the reality towards God. So.
Snap back to reality. Oh,
I
thought about that as I was saying it.
Because you snapped when you said it too. Snap back. Oh, that was good.
By the way, we never introduced the strapping.
Oh,
in
I'm sorry.
last-
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry. Let's do that. So Peter, do you want to give like a brief intro to yourself, or one of the guys could introduce you? Like, where are you from? What do you do?
Where am I from? What do I do? That's a great question.
Why are you here? Like,
that's a deep question. Why?
Have one of
Why
your
are you
friends
here?
introduce you.
What's your purpose, Peter?
Oh, that is a great question. If you figure it out, let me know, please. I don't know. I've been around Chicago for a long time. I grew up in Chicago, kind of. I was there at the nexus of Quo Vadis, the young adults group, I think on campus. That's my home parish. That's where I grew up. And then also for men's group at St. Al's. Let's see, what have I been doing? I've kind of been all over the place. I was out on the West Coast for a couple of years doing race car stuff. I was before that I was a missionary at Northern. And then the last couple of years, I was a social worker at a mercy home. And then I was orienting myself towards the seminary through the Archdiocese, but looks like that's kind of dead in the water. Now I'm, I don't know, just kind of trying to figure out the next step. I've always done, like when I was out in Portland on the West Coast, I started a young adult group out there as well. I've always been very interested and like focused on the idea or concept, I guess, of having strong and resilient and robust spiritual connections with the people in like within our communities and our parishes. So I loved that this was the topic.
That's so funny because we didn't even actually plan that. I think Kevin asked you before we even knew what we were going to talk about, but it really is the perfect topic for you.
Yeah,
that's
awesome. Like it's a recurring theme.
Nice. Cool. Okay. So do you have any, like, I mean, you kind of said a little bit, but like, do you have any prevailing thoughts on like why is young adult ministry so important that, you've devoted a significant chunk of your life in some seasons to that particular brand of ministry? Why?
I think it's just like the young mind is such a critical kind of spot to be in your faith, because a lot of times we go to college and it's it's very that is an environment antithetical to growing in faith in a lot of ways. So I think getting the hooks in, I guess, and like kind of making some inroads, kind of what Kevin said. right after as a young adult. It really sets us up. You know, those relationships and those friendships, they can set us up for the rest of our lives. Because I always feel that you know, all the people that are just, you know, kind of happen in our lives, all the relationships that are just kind of given to us, it seems by chance. Those are all gifts and crosses, sometimes from God, in order to increase our holiness or be an asset in terms of somebody else's salvation. So I think, just being focused and mindful that we can be either an asset or a liability in terms of the sanctity of the people around us, in their path towards holiness. So young adult groups, I think, really kind of focus in on that. And then, you know, especially like the shout out to men's group, where just, you know, the steel sharpens steel, and, you know, kind of, you know, hitting each other kind of hard in a way that increases our spiritual resilience and our strength and our fortitude, and kind of builds us up in a way that I think we wouldn't really get in a lot of our other, you know, secular relationships.
Yeah. You kind of hit on this, I think, more than anybody, but specifically with regards to like the actual purpose of young adult ministry. Like, I mean, I think we, you know, the six of us who do this live stream regularly, and like just, you know, various people that we're friends with, we all have had conversations about like, what's the purpose of young adult ministry, and like, how do we do it well, or how do we do it the way it should be done? So do you guys have any thoughts about that? Like, I know that's a very general, very broad question, because there's a lot to be done within young adult ministry, but what is, like, how do we actually do it well?
Well, so I think an important thing in what I've seen, it's really easy to, I mean, it's really easy to get a group of people together, especially in the context of, you know, like a Bible study or something like that. I mean, it's not hard to gather people together, especially in the area where we live, because, you know, there's a million churches and there's a million people. But obviously, it's pretty easy to get groups of people together. But what happens from there can really be a crapshoot, because, I mean, I think we've all been to plenty of young adult groups where it's really just, there might be a lot of people there, but there's like no life in the room. You know, there's just so many things that have to be attuned to your audience. Like, I was involved in a young adult group in the city here for a while, where there was a constant desire to serve up things, you know, to a very specific group of people that almost nobody, Peter's laughing, that almost nobody else would ever want to do. And, you know, for me, I always felt, I truly feel as though the best way to get to know people, especially, at least initially, and when new people are coming into town and new people are coming into a group, the best way to get to know people is honestly just to like sit around, have a beer. If you don't drink, like that type of environment is the perfect way to get to know people. You know, in a group, it's like a comfortable setting. And then, you know, that might be the genesis of things, and it's not the only thing you can do, but, you know, it's very important to know, number one, you know, what kind of people are coming to your group. And it also has to be general enough, not super specific. You can't be sitting there talking about, you know, some high, you know, lofty theological concept that nobody's going to understand. You know, it's got to be accessible. I mean, these are just a few ideas right off the top of my head, but I guess I've got more criticisms of what I know doesn't work than, you know.
I mean, yeah, feel free. That's on the list of questions as well.
I mean, I'm sure we'll get there, you know, I kind of, you know, very in a disorganized fashion, kind of rattled off a few things there. But yeah, I'm sure other people have more to add.
I like that, and I do like thinking about what does work. I think it's important to call that out, and we'll also give a shout out to men's group at St. Alphonsus. I think that it's, I mean,
classic.
I mean, I've been a part of a lot of young adult men's groups in my life, not just in Chicago, and I really do think that, you know, men's group does it right in a lot of ways. One, I think, is just the way it fosters intentionality. You have to be intentional about showing up. You have to be committed. It's not just a thing where it's like, well, I don't really have anything better to do on Thursdays, so I guess I'll go hang out with some guys and drink beer. You know, it's intentional. Everything we do is intentional. We start out with prayer. You know, we have challenging topics, you know, that are supposed to challenge and provoke and, you know, make you think more deeply about your faith. So I guess going back to something you said, Zach, yeah, I do think kind of the informal conversations are important. But I think that you need something like men's group where it's kind of like programming where it fosters intentionality and commitment and community. And of course that's all grounded in like solid church teaching and things like that. But
I don't know. Yeah, if I can interject too, I mean, and we don't have to necessarily chase this rabbit all the way down the hole, but I was kind of thinking, you know, the St. Al's men's group's been brought up a couple times already, and it's a great example of, you know, kind of what is done right, I think, because like I said, and there's a constant attendance, like, you know, it's pretty good numbers. I guess I'll say it like from my point of view, what I have really enjoyed about that group is it's unabashedly Catholic. I mean, you know, you said you open up with prayer, and this is particular to the men's group. You know, I don't know I think the women's groups are smaller based, right?
Mm-hmm.
There.
I can talk, yeah, and I could talk about that a little bit, but
yeah. So these are just examples, I guess, of, you know, relative to us. But, you know, Ephrem said you open up with prayer, but more specifically, you're opening up with evening prayer, which is an interesting thing because I think a lot of Catholics, myself included, I had no idea how to pray the Liturgy of the Hours prior to like a couple years ago. Like, didn't even know really what it was other than something I heard, you know? And so when you're exposed to that, and number one, like you go into a room of 30 or 40 guys in a small chapel and everybody's praying in unison, the Liturgy of the Hours, like that resounds. And that is an experience you cannot get anywhere else, you know, short of going to seminary or joining a religious order. I mean, and that's
true.
That is, you know, that goes straight to the root of our Catholic identity. That's why it exists, is because, you know, like religious orders use the Liturgy of the Hours to basically pray their way into heaven. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I guess I'll just call out that particular detail. It's a very, you know, prayer in unison, but also prayer in unison relative to our Catholic identity.
Well, it's prayer in unison with the entire church.
Yeah. You're right.
That's really interesting because, I mean, I've obviously never been to men's group, but like, I think that, but I think that like, yeah, I mean, nobody would notice if I just like snuck in, right? Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting because that also does introduce like a certain level of structure that I think doesn't really exist in secular life. Like we live in a very unstructured, undisciplined world. And like you can, yeah, I mean, I just think that's really interesting that like the Liturgy of the Hours is intense. It requires some serious structure and some serious discipline. And even if you're only doing it that one prayer on that one day, I just think that the concept introducing structure, and like you said, Ephrem, like for men to, we've talked before on here, actually it was an episode with Eric about dating, like just, I think how it's difficult for not just men, but in general, our generation to commit to things and to say like, okay, I'm going to do this thing with my Thursday night, every Thursday. That means something. Like that kind of commitment, that kind of discipline and structure really means something. So yeah, that's just an interesting point. I really like that. That's cool.
My vision always for communities is that you have this central base that you're always coming together. And so, I mean, at the risk of just using men's group as the example, that the Thursday nights was one time everyone came together. You knew this is where you could go, and if you were split, you should be committed. Excuse me, and you go there every Thursday night. You knew that it was happening. But from there, I mean, you have a ton of people breaking off and either saying like, "Hey, let's go hang out on a Friday night or a Saturday night." Like all these things are happening. Like one of my first ever, Peter might remember this, one of my first ever men's group events was Drew Patterson organized this like beach outing up in Highland Park.
Mhm.
And we actually challenged him, like 7th graders, and we beat him at volleyball, didn't we?
It was righteous.
Yeah, it was pretty righteous.
Seventh
That
graders.
sounds very Drew
Yeah,
Patterson.
but
He watches, by the way. He watches TCI.
Oh,
by the way.
hey,
if you're
Drew.
watching, shout out. I hope you're enjoying Oklahoma.
Hope you're enjoying my motorcycle jacket.
Oh.
Oh.
But yeah, it just like a lot of things is where there's this one thing you do together, and like I like what you said, Mary Kate, about providing structure. It was an important thing. But then from there, it's kind of like we shout out. I mean, we started using Slack and emails and like just, hey, who's around? Let's go do this thing. And it just, I think that's what it was so good. It's just like, it wasn't just Thursday night. I was hanging with these guys multiple times. We watched, the 2016 World Series together. We watched soccer and all these things. We did all these things, together. It wasn't, every time you get together, it was not talking necessarily about, these deep truths and philosophy. Now it could always go there, like it could always go there, or we could just talk about like ridiculous dude stuff that just,
like memes and SpongeBob.
No, not that.
Like smacking down 7th graders in volleyball.
Yeah, exactly. You guys got it.
You housing a 7th grader, like what?
After they're already crying.
Yes.
what Tim was saying before, and Kev, I think it's kind of like touches on what you were just kind of getting at, is that C.S. Lewis, I think I talked about this a couple of episodes ago, C.S. Lewis in the Four Loves talks about the friendship love. And I think it's really interesting the way he talks about it, because he talks about it as actually being like the most special in a particular sense of all of the loves, because like romantic love, or, like love between a married couple, is like more carnal, like it's more in our nature. But friendship is like where you, like your intellect is so much at play and being engaged there. And it's like this, like, I think the phrase that C.S. Lewis uses is, "You too, I thought I was the only one." Like when you find a friend, there's this experience of like, we have a shared experience that connects us, and we can engage in relationship together because of that. Or through that, or like with that, or whatever. So I just think that's like a really good point, that, men's group, as the example that we keep using, you all come together on Thursday nights, pray, talk about whatever you might talk about that evening. And that's how it starts. But then when you begin to engage in relationship, it sort of like, it's not just Thursday night anymore. Like now you're choosing to be together other times, because, and that's community, right? Is like, I'm not companions with these people. Like I'm not just coexisting with them in a particular moment. I'm like living life alongside them and engaging with them outside of the moments that are predisposed for us to engage together.
Right. Well, and ideally, and again, that's the purpose of, there's some emulation of this for the layman too, but that's the purpose of monastic life too, is wearing down the rough edges that are inherent to every single person, like you need, like Peter said earlier, steel sharpens steel. You need, especially for men, like men need other men in order to help them grow. I mean, it's a basic fact, if you don't have anybody challenge, oh gosh, yeah. Jason Craig.
Yeah, that book is so good.
Yeah.
It's on my desk. I'll get to it in 5 years.
He's a good dude.
And a copy nearby.
Anyway, so I'm sorry, Zach. I'm sorry.
No,
I interrupted you.
that's fine.
Keep going.
You're just doing product placement. That's all.
Yeah, they paid us, so. Yeah.
I'm not giving money. Who's getting money? They paid you.
Yeah, you gonna split those royalties?
Sorry, Zach. Keep going.
Oh, they said they're offering up a rosary or that sort of royalty. So.
Yeah, they were like, "We'll pray for you if you plug our book."
Pray for you. No, but yeah, that's the point. I think that's another quality of young adult community that
Peter's frozen.
Very happy.
I wasn't
Take
gonna
a
say
screenshot.
I wasn't gonna say anything, and then I saw Ephrem laughing, and
Oh, that would have been perfect.
Peter, your
All right.
face was frozen in like pure joy. Now you're back.
great.
Yeah.
It was a great. It was a really good shot. Zach, please finish your thought.
I don't know if I want to anymore.
I'll do.
Shared service. Shared service is another important part of young adult community. It's probably something that doesn't happen nearly as frequent as anything else. But I do think it's important, even if it happens infrequently. Like for example, around here, a lot of times young adult groups, a lot of people will go to the Mission of Our Lady of the Angels and help, unload food. That's a shout out big time. That place is
Big time.
where it's at. Doing stuff, so they have a soup kitchen there, food truck and everything. And it's just good work. I mean, and that's a good way to get to know people too, is when you're working alongside them, particularly in something that's uncomfortable or that kind of gets you out of your comfort zone, especially. That's why you want to get to know other people well, go on a mission trip with them, or go on, the organization I'm involved with, Eagle Eye. I mean, you go on a backcountry hike with a bunch of people, and when you have to take a dump in the bag, next to somebody that you just met the other day.
Let's be clear. That's not a shared experience.
It's not a shared experience, but right?
I mean, it could be like.
Could be.
Like if someone else holding the bag, I mean, that's really.
Ew.
Well, how big is the bag? Is this a one-man bag? Is it...
It depends
Hopefully
on
it's at
what
least like a
package you paid
gallon.
for.
Yeah.
If you paid for the platinum package, you get your own bag.
Oh, okay.
But
That sounds like no fun.
I'm pretty sure Father Nathan would not be happy with that language anyway.
Adult ministry, holding the bag for the other.
Shared
Oh.
service.
Shared
Just like
service.
washing the
feet.
Air
Oh my
quotes.
gosh. Oh my gosh.
But you get the picture. That's the best way to get to know people, is by living uncomfortably often. I mean, that's how you really will bond with somebody through extended service like that. I'm sure, I mean, that you guys in the seminary, you guys do that all the time, right? Or like you have scheduled service with your classmates from time to time, or
They're like, no, we actually don't do any of that at all.
I mean, well, there's not much scheduled. I mean, there's definitely a lot of efforts. We help at OLA a lot, and there's guys who do all sorts of stuff. I mean, there's definitely is some things going out to give clothes to day laborers. There's Feed My Starving Children's right nearby, so a lot of guys will go do that with
Chop for Life.
Chop for Life is
Chop for life.
it's a cool ministry where it's very, very manly. You go out and chop wood, and then they sell the wood. It's like the trees that fall down at Mundelein. There's a lot of them. They chop the wood, they sell the wood, and then the money goes to a pro-life organization. I can't tell you which one it is.
Pregnancy resource centers, I think.
There we go. So you know better than I.
Yeah, no, we talked about this on my podcast 6 months
lumberjacks
ago.
for
Oh,
life.
that's right,
Why do they do
that's
that?
My other podcast,
Yeah, other podcasts. Yeah. I mean, it definitely is, and it's and we actually I mean, speaking of, I guess the service at Mundelein, our vice rector last year instituted a day of service, and right after was it right after our silent retreat or right before? Right after, wasn't it?
Oh man, it might have been right after.
I think it
Yeah.
was right after we do a 5-day silent retreat to start the school year, and then the day after, it was Saturday, we did a day of service, and we helped do stuff across, so chopping trees, painting fences, installing a patio. So there's a lot of guys I think that were skeptical going into it, but it actually helped. I think there's a lot of guys who really enjoyed it. It's like, you're doing manual labor, taking care of the place where we live, and just doing it on the side of each other. And the teams are just randomized, so it's there's some guys who you don't know as well. I mean, it's even though there's only like 150 guys there. I mean, you don't know everyone super well. But yeah, that shared service is a good thing. I think every successful young adult organization that I can think of from across Chicago and outwards has that element. And sometimes only there's some people who only do that. Like I know there's people who only really want to show up for that service element, and that's fine. I think it's a good way to maybe eventually like fold them into more of the parish life. But
Yeah, along those same lines, I think that community can be a school of charity in a lot of ways where you have to learn to live
Amen.
unselfishly. So like, for example, because of men's group, I live with 4 other guys now that I met through men's group. And, you know,
I'm sorry.
it's a school of charity, you know, like there's times when I need to go to work and somebody's taking forever in the shower, or
John, come on, dude.
the fridge is like full of food and I just bought a
John,
bunch
come
of
on, get your
groceries
Miller
and there's
Lite
nowhere
out
to
of the
put it.
fridge. John,
Yeah,
get your Miller out of the
there's
fridge.
times when you want to sit on the couch and John's taking it off.
John's taking it all
John
up.
is taking up the whole couch, taking his nap.
In his nap.
But I mean, like, I think that's super important,
Gotcha,
and
John.
that's actually this kind of leads into another point I want to make when we're talking about like what's the point of young adult ministry.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's actually a good thing that it's temporary in nature. It's not supposed to be permanent. It's not a vocation. Being a religious or a priest or being married is a vocation. And so I think that something like, you know, living in community with other guys prepares you for that, because you're forced to live charitably and be patient with other people. And, you know, grow in just the virtue of being unselfish, which I think it's so easy in our culture nowadays to just kind of be off on your own and kind of do your own thing and slide on by without kind of close friendships that will challenge you.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to call that out as a benefit.
Praise God. It also like quells the waiting too, you know, like, I mean, I think a lot of us have had, Zach and Ephrem, I think I've had conversations with both of you about this. Like, there is a certain element of, there is a cross in being in a young adult community and like being the one who's like, I hate to use this phrase, but like the one who's like left behind when like everyone's, you know, like moving on, like everyone's getting married and having babies. And it's, I mean, beautiful, praise God. We love that. That's what we want. But it like, there is a certain experience there, you know? And like, I do think that having that community also, and even for the people who haven't experienced that, who are just like really, really desiring their vocation and it's just not happening on their time, having the option to share that experience with other people who are living that as well,
Yeah,
eases that the discomfort, or helps to like live in it in a virtuous, sanctifying way.
yes, and if it's being done right, though, it's not just like, obviously, yeah, there's times when you need, you know, comfort and like, I guess, just the friendship, like kind of the mutual understanding of what it's like to be, you know, waiting or still searching for, you know, whether it's a spouse or discerning, you know, religious life sort of thing. But I think also the danger of becoming too comfortable in, you know, comfortable situations, like never really wanting to grow up or move on sort of thing, which is, I mean, we all have to admit, I think that's pretty dang common also.
Yeah.
And it's an easy trap to fall into, you know.
Very common.
What's that?
I think it's more common for guys. I don't know.
Here we go. Like, here we go.
No, I feel like it's more common for guys, or at least in my experience, that, you know, it's super comfortable to just sit with the guys and drink a beer and watch the game. Rather than, I don't know.
Yeah, women, we just can't help ourselves. It's just not so easy to be complacent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I think it exists on both sides in different ways. But if you're doing it right, you should be continually preparing for your vocation, you know, whether, I mean, and like, it's always active discernment no matter what. You know, you shouldn't just be sitting around. If you're interested in somebody, for example, you ask them on a date. You don't sit around and say like, you know,
only 24. I can wait till I'm 30.
Right. And same thing applies to religious life. And I think these are all lessons that all of us have, you know, kind of learned through difficult ways, or, you know, are still learning.
Yeah, I just think the danger we don't want to fall into is that young adult ministry or this time is just like some sort of this like, yeah, it's temporary. Yeah, it's like, I mean, there's a waiting, there's an anticipation involved in it, but like, if you're only using it as an end to get to your vocation, I think you're somehow missing out on something.
Well,
I mean, first and foremost, you need to use it as a first and foremost, you're using it as a way to grow in holiness, and in doing that, I firmly believe you just almost kind of I don't want to say stumble into your vocation, but like it's going to, if you're living a life of holiness,
I agree,
and truly the will of God, which is a community, is part of. I would put it as part of God's plan for humanity in the way. I mean, He created the church, so I just don't want us to like make it some sort of like this period of waiting, and I'm using it to prepare for the next life. Kind of like, hey, Miss Johnson, why do I have to learn algebra? Well, you need to learn it for 8th grade, and then you're always preparing for the next grade, and it's
cursive.
It's so annoying. And then you learn cursive, and like 5th grade comes around, you're like, you never use cursive again, and then Kevin never uses cursive again.
Now it's outlawed.
Yeah, thank God.
It's outlawed.
So I just want to throw that out there. I guess if you want to discuss that.
And I think that kind of like hits on an important thing that I've feel really strongly about in young adult groups, is that I think one of the markers of a successful young adult group is a critical mass of people who come there to give of themselves, rather than who come there to get something. And I've seen so many people who are like, I'm here to get what I want out of it. Like I want to see if there's people that I'm attracted to, or if they're like, I like these events, or if I think that this liturgy is something that I particularly like. It's like, then you're kind of missing the point of like, you go to the church, and like when you think of the early church, everybody goes there and you give everything.
Yeah.
And I think especially because we're so transient, we're like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to be here this long. These people don't really matter. Like, in 4 or 5 years, I'm not going to know them because I'm going to be married, and then I'm going to, be moving out to the suburbs and having my, 2.8 children. And I think it gets kind of lost, the purpose of like going to a community and giving of yourself generously.
Amen.
Go, Tim. What were you going to say?
Yeah, Tim.
1.7 is the current total fertilization rate. 1.7. So sorry.
I was talking the Catholic rate.
Yeah.
The Catholic rate, 2.8.
If you add in the one dog, then it's about 2.
Yeah, you got to add the dog. The dog that's the pre first baby dog. Yeah. No, Peter, I think that is such a good point, because we have friends in the community now that I feel have taught me a lot about living that way, as opposed to living in this way of like young adult ministry as a stepping stone for me to enter into my vocation. And that really is the game changer in terms of like how you are living within the community, because we can live this, like, it's almost like this consumer, like consumptive life of like, I'm just showing up to get, it's like what you said. It's what you said. I'm showing up to get something out of this. Like I want, it's utilitarian versus like, and like Kev, maybe you kind of touched on this too, about like, it's not, I have to do this. It's, I get to do this. Like I get to serve these people now. Like, even if this isn't my permanent vocation, like this isn't the vocation that the Lord has in store for me. Like the Lord has put me here now to be Christ for these people. And then I think when you start to live it that way, and I mean, I have friends who have said that like they consider it a blessing that they get to be the single friend in our group of friends who are married and have children, because they get to be the one who can give a date night out to the married couple so that they can, and they come and stay with their kids, or they can be the one who can drop what they're doing at a moment's notice to go and help our other friend who just went into labor or something. You know what I mean? Like there are privileges that come with being that friend, and with living in this community and having that freedom that I think we take for granted when we look at it as this experience of like, I'm just here until the next thing comes along. Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. So what are some of the, now that we've talked about all the great things about young adult community, young adult ministry.
About men's group.
About men's group. I mean, let's be honest. We've really just talked about all the great things about men's group. If you're a man in the Chicago area, come to St. Alphonsus. There's a great men's group, right, guys? Yeah, no, I think, I do think it's important to kind of talk about some of the struggles that exist within this community life, you know, and like some of the problems that we run into, which I think there are many. And, you know, I don't know if it was Ephrem said it well, that like, this is also an opportunity for us to grow in charity, but that means that it's not easy a lot of the time. So do you guys have any immediate thoughts about that?
Gossip. I think gossip is huge in Catholic young adult communities because it's small. We all know each other. And I mean, it's just a small group. And so I've just found that you have to be careful about what you're sharing with other people and think about, you know, would I appreciate it if somebody said this about me to someone else? Yeah.
Amen.
Definitely that. I think also there's the possibility of, you know, while it's super comfortable to be with a group of peers who all believe the same thing as you, it's also pretty dang dangerous and defeats the purpose of evangelization if it's all you cling to. And I've kind of gone through these interesting phases in my own life where, you know, entirely secular friends and background until I moved to Chicago. And then pretty much within that first year or so, you know, kind of made the transition from essentially, you know, all of my friends I grew up with to people, you know, that I just had more in common with, and that always boiled down to faith for the most part. But now again, you know, like being in the working world, you know, all of my friends at work, you know, not many of us can relate on matters of faith, but it doesn't make those relationships any less important. And so I think I have seen also in young adult groups very insular property, you know, like a very insular property that keeps you like, not everybody either, you know, but I guess the possibility exists of being afraid of branching out and actually, you know, growing in the ways that we're supposed to. Everybody is, you know, everybody's supposed to evangelize in their own walk of life.
Yeah, I think if it gets too concentrated, like our behaviors or our social circles get too concentrated in just, you know, our you know, church friends, then we never get those opportunities to bring somebody else in. Or if we're, you know, just doing something like going to down to the beach to play volleyball last year. Like, you know, inviting some of our secular
graders
friends.
there.
Yeah. like smashing some seventh graders. Like, how better to show them the love of Christ than, you know, an 80-mile-an-hour spike in their face?
Stop a seventh grader. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's the point. It's like you find some random people and you mix them in with some of your church friends, and I think a lot of times, like the shared kind of like cultural understanding, like amongst our friends of not necessarily in a religious sense, but the shared understanding of growing in virtue, that can translate, you know, that you know, transcends the boundaries of, you know, religious conversation. And so, like, you know, I can bring one of my good guy, you know, Catholic friends, and we can hang out with one of my, you know, non-Catholic friends, and then just like in that process, encourage each other in the growth of virtue.
And I was going to say too, I mean, like, especially in today's day and age, I mean, church people are weird because they don't, you know how to associate with any other people. You know, like that's what the world sees, is just this closed group. And again, it's not everybody, but if you have, it's like the John Paul II, you know, idea of, like, you know, like, I want to see saints in tennis shoes and like people who go out and climb mountains and that sort of thing. Like, if your idea of, you know, community is just somebody, you know, like your group of friends dressed up nice for Sunday mass, that sort of thing, like, I don't know. I mean, for me, it's never satisfied me. Absolutely, you know, like I always feel the need to keep going outside of that. I mean, at least it's coming on more now, and it's probably just a natural thing, you know.
Yeah.
We're meant to go out and relate with other people.
To
And
take
that's
that
why
like
communes become so weird. I have to say.
What'd you say? What's
So
become
that's
so
why
weird?
communes become so weird. That's why
Oh,
those
yeah,
things
yeah.
become like inbred and, you know, become a hotbed of like basically just, you know, the same stuff that exists out in the rest of the world. It doesn't keep you safe from any sort of.
I do want to talk about, I want to do a whole thing on that one day. Talking about like the
Comedians.
Benedict
Didn't we already
option.
talk about this in a way or something?
I mean, okay, so like our first sidebar, our first like 3 episodes, we were like, let's pick like 16 topics and talk about all 16 in 2 hours. And then we discovered that we literally can't stop ourselves at an hour with one topic.
Yeah.
So now we're just repeating stuff.
Not educated enough for one topic, let alone 16. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think it's a fine line to walk. You know, in seminary, we talked about seminary being like a Nazareth experience. So Jesus spent 30 years in Nazareth being formed before he went out in his public ministry. And I think to all extent, we all made a certain type of like time in Nazareth, and you know, it could be at men's group or at mass or in your small group or whatever it might be, where you are, you know, fed around like-minded people who believe the same things you do and will build you up. But then I think, you know, it's a very important call out that we're also called to be the salt of the earth and the light of the world. So yep. I think we almost should feel a little tension in between those things.
Yeah.
It's an interesting point, because I think to take it like even a step further, there are people that I think we could all think of someone or a couple of people who are choosing to be a part of our community, but maybe, how do I say this? Like, are still in a place that they're not all the way there with the faith. So they choose to show up, but they bring with them some really challenging ideas that, and I don't mean challenging like intellectually challenging necessarily. I mean challenging like things that we fundamentally believe are wrong or are not true.
Yeah, like a foot in both worlds.
Yeah, like they have one foot in, one foot out. And so that like that's something that I've really experienced in a particular way at St. Al's, is like, how do we meet people where they are in young adult community, which I think we have a particular calling to do, while at the same time holding this standard of like, this is the standard of truth. And like, we have to abide by that and acknowledge it and live with it. And, you know, this, like, I mean, you could go so many different ways with this, because I think that is the experience of charity, right? Like Ephrem, I think that's what you were saying with regards to like engaging in relationship, is like, some people are on this journey with us, and they're just in a different place than we are. And when we're, you know, it's true. The echo chamber effect is like so real in young adult community, but there is also this flip side element of like, we have to meet people where they are. And if they're coming in and they are saying, I want to be here, I want to be part of this community. But for us, as the ones who are, you know, we consider ourselves to be all the way in, like, I'm totally sold out on everything the church teaches. That is challenging for us when there are people who want to be here, but aren't sold out on everything the way that we're sold out on everything. And that's, I wouldn't call it a problem, because I think that's the point. Like, that is the point, is like, they see something attractive about what we have in our parish or in our, you know, group of friends or whatever, and they want to be part of it. So how do we welcome that person? And I think this, you know, again, I think the church struggles with this, not just, you know, not just young adult communities. I think the church struggles with this, but like, how do we do that well, that we embrace those people and also like accept them where they are, but also hold this standard of truth?
That's the story of Abby Johnson. What you just talked about was this woman who comes to this, I think she was like a Bible study or something. Mm-hmm. And she came to this Bible study for, I want to say it was like at least a year before she even like came to the realization that there was big incongruity between what she does, manage an
Wow.
abortion clinic,
Yeah.
and being Catholic. And I don't think I think a lot of times it's it seems like it's a case by case sort of, it depends.
Yeah.
But you have to kind of maybe encourage the realization of that, or to discover that dissonance between the life we live and the life we desire, or the life like we are orienting ourselves towards.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times it's oh gosh, there are some people who are really hard-headed, and
Yeah.
and you have to just like kind of, all right, they're going to get there eventually, and maybe they'll get there the hard way. But what is my purpose? Like, how do I be charitable and patient and balance like the justice of like bringing them to the realization of who Christ is,
Yeah.
and what that means in their life, versus be mirthful and allow them to kind of walk that path on their, like, at their own pace, without pushing them too far and therefore pushing them away.
Right. Well, and I think, to piggyback on that, I think it goes back to what we were saying before, that we have to have like a change in the way that we view community, to the extent that we can say, like, stop looking at that type of interaction or like that experience with that person as like, this person's making my community difficult and making my experience uncomfortable, and change it to like, this person, the Lord is using this person in a very particular way to challenge me in virtue where I am like weak. Like, it's hard to be patient. It's hard to be charitable in those instances. And it's hard to hear things that are not consistent with truth, and like respond to that with kindness and empathy, and like the way that the Lord would respond to it. And yeah, I mean, that's where, like, I think that's really where this like change in the way that we see community has to happen, because we have to realize, like, this isn't about me. Like, this interaction is not about me. This interaction is about this person and this soul that the Lord has brought us together. One of you said it before, like, the Lord brings relationships into our lives. I mean, yeah, it's a real.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting line. I mean, I guess it always depends on what it actually is, though, too, because you don't, like, if it ever came down to the sort of thing where an individual was talking about this activity and people in the group are condoning it, that's not right either.
For
That's
sure.
Yeah. And so obviously
sure.
I mean, I by and large would not say I'm the best type of person to ask about how to solve a situation like that, but it is definitely a fine line,
Right. And that's the thing, is like, what's charity in that scenario? Charity is giving people the truth in that.
Well,
I think in that scenario
is charity.
Yeah. Right. But doing it in a way that is kind, and
right.
Yeah.
I feel like that could be a whole topic in itself. Like,
it honestly could.
How well do you have to know someone before you can know for sure that you can give them feedback in a way that they're going to accept it? Like,
right.
Or maybe like another topic for another time would be like the employment of like righteous indignation when dealing with people who you disagree with. Mm-hmm. Like I don't know. I need help parsing it out. Maybe that'll be the next episode. Is like when is it appropriate? Because it seems like
the table.
What's that?
I just
want to flip the table.
When you flip the table, like,
yes.
Can I get
my
there
gosh.
Yet? Where is the green light for the table?
Yes,
I was going to make a point about the life of Christ. Is oftentimes when people talk about righteous indignation, they talk about the Temple Mount, the selling of goods, and he flips the table, makes the whip, and starts whipping people. But that's literally, now granted, we don't know the entirety of the life of Christ.
Right.
There's certainly much more things. The book of John says that, but like we're talking about in Scripture itself, that's one kind of day in the life of Christ. Everything else is much more centered on like encountering people in talking with them and challenging them. And certainly, he tells people they're hypocrites quite often. But yeah, it's a great example. But it's like all too often we switch on to that righteous indignation. We throw down the book and we make a threshold for people. Either you would meet me here or you're out. And we do it all the time in secular culture. We don't know how to like disagree with each other anymore. And that bleeds over into the church as well. And but that's kind of goes along with what we were talking about because there are people that have come to men's group who weren't even Catholic, but they're kind of interested. They like the life that we're kind of living there. And there's one particular guy who's a high Anglican, and he came for a while, and I really thought he was gonna come in, and something happened at one of our meetings, and he just snapped and left. And it's like, oh, we were so close. And Andrew, if you're watching, please, we love you. Please come back. But I probably shouldn't have called out. But anyways, you know what I mean, though.
You didn't use the last name.
Yeah.
I've already gotten myself in trouble for that numerous times, so it's whatever. It's fine.
He's not watching, but yeah.
Yeah.
If there's any
I don't know.
Anglicans watching, we want you.
We want you.
We want you.
You need to be with
We
us.
want you.
No offense towards the low Anglicans.
Oh, yeah.
Or the medium.
Or the medium Anglicans. So, wow, I was going to ask a question and now it just flew out of my mind. Are there any questions in the chat?
I have a question.
Oh, Ephrem, go. Give us your question.
Well, I don't know. So going back to this whole thing about, being welcoming and not being insular and things like that. And, Peter, I thought you had some good things to say. I'm just wondering, for someone who is more introverted, or they're like, I'm just not naturally a person who goes out and starts spiking on 7th graders, like, how can I reach out to people, so I'm just wondering if there are any ideas or thoughts on that.
I don't know what it's like to be an introvert at all.
Don't try it. It's not fun.
He stares at the floor just like,
Yeah.
can't do it.
But I have found that, like, in there are a lot of, or there have been a lot of situations where it is something that's like really, it's really challenging, or something that I'm averse to. That every time I have, given myself up to, like, all right, I don't want to be the person to have to do this, but I'm going to go there. That it's always been very fruitful. So I think, like, keeping in mind, I mean, I guess it doesn't really help or answer your question directly as you asked it, but really to shoulder the cross of that and go out and, like, maybe engage with somebody. And I think one of the things I think about, especially in young adult groups, is like social generosity. When we are we're the core group, there's kind of, when you think about, like, if we as the core group who know each other well and have these, well-formed relationships, kind of like look towards each other inwards, then we're never, it's kind of a sort of self-serving thing. But if we take that and we, like, kind of look at it outwards and say, you know what, I know everybody in this group, and I am, like, I can look out and find somebody who's new and say, hey, like, I'm going to be interested in you, instead of you coming up and being interested in me as, like, oh, you're one of the, the people that's here a lot, like, you must, be well connected or whatever it is, and, like, go out and like, humble yourself to, like, extend an invitation to that person. And then, maybe from this is a little bit more helpful, like, you can do that and then pass off and, like, delegate that. So, like, hey, you're new here. Like, I only have to make one, couple sentences, and then say, oh, like, let me introduce you to this guy. He's, like, whatever, blah, blah, blah. He also, is an engineer or whatever it is. And then you don't have to shoulder directly the entire burden of that interaction, but you have made that difficult first step, and then allowed that person to like, come more fully in, without you having to, take the full brunt of sustaining that interaction.
Kind of like being Barney Stinson. Hey, have you met blank?
Have you met Ted? Wow, I can't believe you just made a How I Met Your Mother reference.
I know.
I thought you hated that show.
I've watched it a lot, and I like the more I watch it, the more I'm like, I don't want to watch this anymore. So I've seen.
But then you just kept watching it.
Well, no, that was it was. I'm talking about, like, I watched the first all the way through. This is totally sidebar, but, like, I watched it all the way through, and I watched it maybe like one or two more times. I'm like, no. I'm just like, the more and more I'm like, there's just better shows. Anyway, sorry I totally just derailed us.
Yeah,
Cheers.
Peter, I'm with you. I feel like as extroverts, we have a particular responsibility
Mhm.
put ourselves out there with people, especially when we recognize, especially if we're in the community and we recognize there are people standing around like waiting for someone to talk to them.
Yeah.
But I would say too, like I was actually thinking about this the other day at Cocktails After Mass at St. Al's. I have so much respect for the new people who show up. Like I was lucky, like Mel Wood brought me in and I have known her for a long time and I didn't have to be that new person in the room. Tom Kelly, my brother-in-law, who you all know. Yes, you all know Tom Kelly, my brother-in-law. He, I remember like,
Heard of him.
you've heard of him. Yeah. He's kind of a legend. No, just kidding. Don't tell him I said that. Oh my gosh.
You're not kidding. He is a
I do
legend
not-
at St. Al's.
Wow. What's the timestamp?
Do not tell him that I said that. Literally, he can't have that on me that I said that. So Tom, 2 or 3 years ago, whenever I first met him before I'm pretty sure at the event he met my sister at, he had at one point told a group of us, like, you all need to not stand in this circle and you need to go and introduce yourselves to other people. And I'm pretty sure he met my sister at that event.
Was that how he got everyone away from your sister? Like, singled her out?
Probably. He's like, I need to clear it away.
I'm gonna start by introducing myself to you. Hello.
Exactly.
Actually, kind of brilliant, guys. If you're looking for
She turns to leave. No, not you. You stay.
Yeah, no, you're staying. Don't creep her out at all.
That might be what happened. Actually, there's a better story with that I'll tell another time. But anyways, yeah, I agree with that. That's a good.
Remember, it involved lederhosen, didn't it?
Yeah, 100% it does.
Wow.
He was wearing one when he asked my sister for a number.
Go.
Is it one lederhosen you wear, or is it multiple?
Are they plural?
Is there a
Lederhosen
pair of
plural?
lederhosen?
What'd you say?
Like a pair of pants, maybe.
Yeah.
What do you call a flock of lederhosen? Is it like a
Later heist. I don't know.
hosen of leaders?
It's a murder. A murder of leader.
Yeah. And what do you call
Oh my
a leader
God.
of a lederhosen?
Oh my.
Wow. Well,
The Uberhosen.
I mean,
Come
yeah,
to
I
the
guess
events where I'm at. It's a blast.
as an introvert in large social situations, as much it may surprise you, but I very much am. Like, if you are an extrovert, I can't overemphasize Peter's point of like going out and just introducing yourself. Like, a lot of my closest friends through the years have been extroverts, probably for that reason, because they're the ones who like came up and introduced and started talking. And it makes a huge difference. So, because I mean, you go up and like tell a group, like do the Tom Kelly thing and tell a group to like go talk to the people, but like, sorry, that's like just not going to work for someone who's
no,
like,
because some people just won't do it.
I just won't do it because it's just like I always feel like you're imposing, and then you're like overanalyzing it all, and then like, well, they're just talking. I don't want to like interrupt that, and like they're like it's also sometimes unhelpful to like, well, you're both not talking, so both of you talk. Well, there's a reason we're both not talking, because we suck at conversation, like me. And we're like, if I'm forced to carry a conversation, oh yeah, it's gonna be 3 seconds. So.
Well, you know what though? This is one of the things I think that St. Al's does well too, is we don't just have cocktails after mass. Like, I know a lot of people who started meeting people at trivia or at, God forbid, at speed dating. So like, you
You're not
know,
allowed to talk about that. So
You're
I'm actually not.
you're
I'm
banned from
actually,
speed dating.
direct.
Yeah, you're gone.
I can't believe you just said that on here. It's true.
You brought it up. Come on. You serve it up, I will dish it out.
I think there's a famous saying about heat in a kitchen.
I am happy to facilitate these awkward encounters. That's what I do best.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, speed dating. So anyways, everyone go to speed dating. It's a great event. All right. Well,
You're not allowed to say that.
I'm about to get a phone call.
I will tell the president.
Sam.
Or the actual Sam.
All right. Derek had a good question. Do you guys have, wait, Ephrem, did you say you had no, you asked your question.
I asked it.
Okay.
I'm out.
Derek had a good question that I think is a question worth asking. If you had to put a number on it, how old is too old for young adult ministry, 35 or 40? Those are the two numbers I hear most often. Or to put it more kindly, at what age does a person stop being a young adult?
I would say 40 if I had to choose between those two numbers.
Well, they say people live longer now, so
40s and
46.
it's the
30s.
number.
They're getting married later.
That's a good point.
Ah, yeah.
That is true.
I mean, it is like as someone who's, I mean, I'm 3 years away from being 35.
I thought you were going to say you're 3 years away from being 40. And in my head, I was like, what?
I'm like, that certainly doesn't feel old now. I mean, I already probably don't necessarily like relate as well to someone coming right out of college at these events. Though I definitely am not like, it's not like painful or anything like that. There's a lot of good people and seminaries. I mean, it's like I don't relate to them, but like, I would say like, I mean, 30, 15 years, if you're 40, you're talking about like 18 years. It's like a whole generation. I would say if you're 40, then there's other groups. I know it's tough because you're telling like, if you're 40 and you haven't settled in your vocation yet, then like, there's like so little at a parish for you to do. Like if you're not welcome with the young adults, there's like the family groups or whatever. I mean, like that's
just kind of like a larger problem in general. I think
Sure.
Not really an area for people like that to fit into. It's like you're either a young adult or you're
Yeah.
a
Which is why I want to get rid of all
Like-
ministries at church. So this works it for my.
Get rid of ministry. Abolish
I-
ministry.
That's
I think
another podcast topic. Let's not get into that.
I think that question kind of it doesn't it misses something, and I think like asking the question kind of betrays that like I don't think there is a too old in general, and thinking that or kind of limiting our social circles, our interactions to a certain age, it kind of just berefts us of a lot of like great connections or like people who have a lot of wisdom. And those relationships could be like a huge asset in our path to holiness. I always go, so like my parents are some of the best people to party with, and I always go, like I went to Tijuana with my mom and my brother and some of his friends, and somebody made a conversation or a comment about like, oh, who's this like old lady who's our chaperone? Who's the chaperone? Like, oh, first of all, that's my mother. And second of all,
mom,
like,
bro.
Yeah. Second of all, like, 3 hours later, she's like, oh, let's go to the next bar. Like, dancing like the life of the party. Everybody loves her. She's, easily can relate. She carries on wonderful conversation, and people want to be around her. And she certainly added to that. But people have this like idea that like, if you're older, it's not really like, acceptable or like okay for you to be here. I actually once this was a point of contention actually with Mac. I was like, hey,
there are a lot of points of contention with Mac.
I was like, hey, my
Sorry,
dad's a man, like a man. Like I want to bring him. Like I was hanging out with him earlier that day. I'm like, I want to bring him to men's group. Like I'm sure he could add like his own like Eastern erudite wisdom and sprinkle that in there. But like it's like, no, this is not for old guys. This is just for young men. And I thought that was kind of a tragic, like not a tragedy, but like it was unfortunate because I think a lot of people could have gleaned a lot from that interaction.
I agree with that stance actually too, for that exact reason. But also, I mean, it would be a different situation if there was clearly different motives behind everything, like grossly different motives, and like motives always mix, obviously, in these circumstances. But like if some dude was just like, or some person was being extremely inappropriate and uncomfortable, which speaks more of just like a totally different issue anyway, you could have with a young person as well.
Exactly.
I mean, then it would be a different story. But I do agree. And I think, as the opposite is true, you can have big problems with being way too exclusive with young adults, unless we're talking like a high school group or something. Yeah. Then don't let,
Yeah.
Or the seventh graders. Don't let any of these guys hear the seventh graders because
as long as they're not separating, you can fight.
Don't come around here because we will destroy you. We will beat you.
I agree with you, Zach. I think that like the obvious example is like if there was an older guy who was hanging out with these like 22-year-old girls who were like fresh out of college, and it was like a questionable situation to people. But the reality is a 27-year-old guy could be making people uncomfortable in the same way that an older guy could be making people uncomfortable. And I do think there's something kind of arbitrary about saying like, since you had a birthday, now you can't come around anymore because you turned 40 or 41 or whatever.
Right.
Like, I get it and I understand why that exists, but I agree. I think it's like, it doesn't feel super fair. And I think maybe some of us can say that because we know some people who are like a little bit beyond the age, but it's like, it's not an issue. I don't know. If it's an issue, then it's an issue.
If you consider a young adult group as like this place where we meet each other to like get married, which a lot of people do. I feel like most people, that's their, maybe get one of their pools for, or their primary pools for finding somebody to fulfill their vocation.
Mm-hmm.
If that is the primary purpose, or like how most people feel about what a young adult group is, then yeah, it's weird and like maybe inappropriate to have like, somebody who's way outside of the, the regular, curve of, they're outliers,
Right.
and either too young or too old. So in that sense, I think there is a too old, or a too creepy, or a too whatever, like kind of predatorial maybe. But if we think of young adult group as just like, hey, this is a place where we can grow in virtue, then there really is no upper limit to like, oh, you're too old to be virtuous anymore. In fact, it's usually the opposite.
Well,
go ahead.
Then what's the point of calling it like a young adult ministry anymore? And at a certain point, it's no longer young adult ministry. It's just a catch-all ministry for anybody else that doesn't kind of fit anywhere. Like, are we? I don't know. I feel like there's something. I don't know. I can't quite like put my finger on it. That there's something about being young adults, and maybe that might just be like a modern kind of issue. So I looked at somebody like 20 years older than I am. On average, they're gonna have grown up in a very different church than like I came into. They're gonna emphasize a lot of different things. I mean, there's some. I guess not like totally like opposite, but like I don't know. I'm still I kind of have the opinion that like young adult should be young adult.
So I mean, what if you were to put the people who go to a lot of, specifically like St. Alphonsus young adult events? I mean, what would you say is like the average age at one of those events or parties or whatever when we can have events?
I don't know, maybe mid-20s, but it kind of goes with the neighborhood though.
Certainly. I mean, it's one of those where I think a lot of people, I mean, when I started at St. Alphonsus in 2015, I mean, a lot of the people who were kind of the I don't want to call them the stars, but the people who were at everything, like I don't really see them at a lot of St. Al's events anymore, whether they're married or they've literally left the city. That's a possibility, but they don't. I mean, I think there's maybe this is another point of conversation, but there's almost like a for some people maybe just like this time period they put on, like I'm going to be at the young adult, and eventually you just kind of grow out of it, if you will. Because I mean, it really is. I mean, that's only was 5 years ago, and it's pretty radically changed in terms of even. I mean, men's groups the same way. I mean, guys, and it's. I mean, we like Ephrem said before. That's fine. It's not like I'm not saying this is like some sort of bad thing, but I think it's just I think it's just kind of that by itself kind of naturally keeps the age younger, where it's why I asked about the kind of the average age. I mean, I think it just kind of that natural transience just kind of keeps it younger.
Well, and I think to that point too, Kev, I think like the phrase state in life, like that's a real thing. And on the one hand, your state in life isn't necessarily contingent on your age, but on the other hand, your state in life has a lot to do with your age, I think, in a lot of instances. And so I think like a healthy, I don't know if I want to say it quite that way. Like, I think that like what you're referring to, like we know people who have just moved on from young adult ministry
Mhm.
because maybe like men's group wasn't necessarily doing it for them anymore the way that it was in the beginning, but they've sort of grown beyond that format, or because like, you know, they've just, for whatever reason, their priorities have changed and they moved on. And maybe it's that their community, where they find community is different, whatever. But I think there's like, you know, an interior question that has to be asked of like, where's the Lord calling me, and what, you know, I don't know. Yeah, I think like, I guess to your point, there is something about like, I think the person has to, if the person's really engaging with the Lord the way that they should, I think we have to believe or hope that like the Lord will take us where he wants us to be. And so on the one hand, like someone with a mature spirituality who is 45 years old might not desire to be around a bunch of 20, you know, people in their mid 20s, because even if they are single, they're living, that's not their state in life. You know, they're not fresh out of college. They're not looking for community outside of like a school environment for the first time in their lives, whatever. But like on the flip side of that, I do think there's like a particular level of like delicacy that we have to take when we observe that kind of scenario and we see that someone who has exceeded that age continuing to come back around. Because I think we have to recognize that like some people just aren't there, and maybe they are seeking something that they're not finding elsewhere. I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm just like rambling. I'm talking out loud, but it's a delicate thing. That's why the question was asked, because it's a delicate
I don't
situation.
think it's always a hard and fast. I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, by calling something young adult group, for the most part, like it already kind of, you know, people
You're eliminating
kinda
like,
stick-
yeah.
stick to their boundaries anyway, you know.
Just like 99% of the time, it's just going to sort itself out anyway.
Right.
I think so.
Yeah.
Just
Well, I
like
think,
there's some
and then
fringe
being
cases.
being generous with the ones who aren't really with it, or who can't pick it up, or who are maybe like a little bit delayed in terms of like their social maturity or whatever it is. And I
Right.
think like those are, you know, we don't have any real life lepers anymore, but I think like we have like social leprosy, where there are people that, you know, nobody wants to
Totally.
deal with. And I think that is an opportunity to reach out to those people, to like dissociate yourself with, you know, kind of like like you said, Mary Kate, like the left, like you said left, the people left behind, but like kind of the leftovers.
Yeah.
Like the social leftovers, like those are people who are, you know, just as worthy of love. And, you know, maybe you connecting to them in some way, you can facilitate them connecting to something that's a little bit more like fulfilling or appropriate, but they're just lost and they don't know how to get there.
Yep.
And this is, you know, something that's, you know, maybe they're, you know, at the social maturity of, you know, somebody in their early 20s, and they're,
Yep.
you know, in their late 30s or early 40s.
Yep. I totally agree. Any more thoughts about that?
Molly asked the question, no, sorry, to answer your question, no, but she asked, what is the antidote to the sometimes insular nature of young adult ministry?
Yeah.
Kinda
What do you guys
answered
think
that.
about that?
Go spike on some 7th graders.
When I was running Quo Vadis, we did a lot of like crossover events with, so back then it was St. Mary the Angels had a really robust group.
Yeah, what happened to it? It
Dude,
disappeared.
Yeah, I moved out. And
Does it
I
even
was gone.
exist anymore?
I think it does.
Oh.
I think it does. It's just
Okay.
like,
Really?
it's real lean, yeah.
Okay.
Just like the like sort of.
I like their stuff.
Yeah, it was really, and so we did like I think it was like a Labor Day event with them every year. We also did something, Old St. Pat's, they have, you know, their thing. We would hook up with them like every once in a while. But then also we did something with Holy Name Cathedral, and those were all within, you know, maybe, you know, a mile and a half or 2 miles. And so that really allowed us to kind of. Do you remember the Theology on Tap at the Blue Star Wine Bar? You guys remember those right off? I mean, the restaurant's not there anymore, but yeah, they like, there were some great events that we had, you know, like a lot two diverse groups that kind of, you know, came together
Yeah.
Especially if it was from a more traditional parish like St. John Cantius, and a less traditional parish like Old St. Pat's. I think those were really good ways to diversify and keep it from becoming stale.
I agree. Yeah, I think those were fantastic. I mean, there hasn't really been anything like that's happened for a long time, and obviously COVID.
We played kickball again. It was a kickball tournament between.
Well,
parishes.
yes, some
Yes,
of the kickball
I remember
stuff.
that.
Yeah. Man.
Can't just cheat it,
Kickball
man.
days of yore.
Just cheated.
Days of yore. Did you say can't just cheated?
Yeah.
We had a divine understanding of the rules that transcended the.
Yeah, they insisted we faced east the entire time. It was totally.
they had a traditional understanding of the rules.
We had to speak in Latin.
Kevin, what it comes down to is you guys just don't remember what kickball was like pre-1962.
That's
all right?
actually
Yeah,
very true. The
Roland
great
Oh my
Elvis
gosh.
kickball.
It was
You
only
know,
after the
you-
great kickball moto proprio that everybody remembered. So
Nobody knows how to round the
According to the
bases
germ.
carrying two throwables. Like nobody knows that anymore.
Oh gosh.
yes.
Nice.
Wow, that was
Church
good.
jokes are the best, aren't they?
Church jokes are the best.
I have a question.
All
Maybe
right.
A question to close it off. I don't know, but
Yep.
Is it how to talk to girls?
yeah.
That's a topic for another day.
Yeah.
Let him off his chain. Here he goes. Let's go. Come on.
Yeah, you can just give me a quick therapy session. No, if you could go back, to when you first joined as a Catholic young adult, what's one thing that you would tell yourself?
Oh dang.
Knowing now what you know.
Don't go to speed dating.
You're getting yourself banned for life, Mary Kate.
Yeah, you're.
I mean, what? I'm just kidding. It was a joke. It was a joke.
Yeah, that's what you tried to say last time. It didn't work.
You're not allowed to say that.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to talk about that.
I'm not allowed to talk about speed dating. Whatever. All right. Keep going.
You've gotten your jabs in.
I know that's a good question. I think, all things considered, maybe try to find a group of men sooner. Men's group didn't form until a little bit after I was there. But maybe try to have found that sooner. I don't know. Because it's one of those things like, would you change something? I'm sure I would, but that's I don't know. I finding that group of men sooner is probably where I'm thinking right now, but I'm sure I can think of something else.
And I
I
think,
agree. Oh no, Peter, go.
Before the men's group, I had never experienced a a young adult ministry social circle that was so clearly focused on the cultivation of virtue. And I think that's something that's lost in a lot of the groups that I started before. It was social, service, and spiritual, but there wasn't really it didn't really it wasn't really enfleshed in the way that it is there, and how I do things now is that if you constantly remind yourself and remind the people around you that we're all trying to grow in virtue and whatever if it's fairness, playing sports, or good sportsmanship or whatever, or it's prudence at the bar or temperance, there are always opportunities to keep that in mind. And I think not compartmentalizing the what we do spiritually versus how we take that to the rest of our lives.
Yeah. I think I would have to say what Kev said, that I didn't come into I didn't have community until I voluntarily left the secular community, but not that I spent years in, that really served as placeholders in my life because I was afraid of not having someone, so I've talked up and down about my college experience. You guys know all this, but like for me, like it was a very clear moment. Like I made a decision, like I am not going to continue to engage in these relationships that are really not relationships, that are just wholly terrible for me. And when I did that, really, like, I think the Lord gave me the grace to step out and trust that like he was going to fill that hole in my life. And then he filled it with St. Al's. And like, I wish, to Kevin's point, like, I wish I had done that sooner. I wish I had like made that decision to say like, trust that the Lord would fill that hole of community in my life, as opposed to just like keeping these placeholder relationships around that were really only hurting me.
Now that you're saying, I think, I know this is for both of us, is like approaching it with, and it sounds like you did approach it with some intentionality. Like, I think when I joined the St. Al's group, I'm just like, well, if I just go to the events, like I'll just make friends and I'll just, not that I'm like really good at that, but like, I'll just like, it'll just happen. Like I'll go and I'll meet people and it'll be great. And maybe one of them will be my future wife. Who knows? That's totally how I approached it. And it
I was just going to make such a bad joke.
Yeah, thank you for holding off. That's my job to make bad jokes about the seminary, Mary Kate.
It's not a bad joke though. She's a beautiful lady.
Yeah. I was actually going to say, and then you met Dan.
Oh my God. She is not a beautiful lady.
Oh, Dan. He'll never hear that because he's in like Minnesota right now. So.
Yeah.
Oh, great state.
Yeah. So it was just, I mean, I don't know if that kind of backtracked me. I mean, I went it with no intentionality and kind of went with kind of the whims. And then once I kind of that blew up a little bit on me, and then I got into a men's group, I kind of like restarted and then was intentional about it. And that worked out really well. So maybe if had I started like that, where would I be now? It's a great question. But I think addressing it with like, going and doing these things for reasons and actually like being more pursuant and intentional about it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I can say personally for me, if I had gotten involved in something, if I had committed to more involvement earlier on, I would have, that was a change that I certainly would have made. It's just be committed to the cause rather than to one or two particular things that I wanted to get out of the group, like whether it was dating or whether it was, kind of in a way, sometimes you can even still meet people at good events, like just to kind of make yourself feel better, like be less lonely sort of thing. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're pursuing any sort of virtue or friendship relationship with people. So getting involved intentionally and serving your church rather than, it was already covered earlier, looking for utility from everything,
Yep.
Yeah. And
all of that comes along the way. Like all those blessings come along the way, just by getting involved in living your life. Don't stop living,
Yeah.
So
yeah, I would say something similar, and that would be just to look for a community that has a sense of commitment and intentionality, because I think there's lots of different young adult groups that are just kind of like flash in the pan, flashy, we go out and we do fun events and then it all kind of just like peters out after a while. But I think that's what really sets St. Alphonsus apart in my mind, is that they have a sense of commitment and are willing to make sacrifices to each other to keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny you say that. I don't know if I mean, St. Alphonsus, I find it to be a very events-based young adult ministry. Like there's some there's like book club and the philosophy. I mean, there's some weekly groups, and I think they've facilitated some of like the men's and women's groups that have formed, maybe more indirectly than directly. But I don't know. I mean, I would call St. Al's. I mean, a lot of what they do is events based. I don't necessarily know if you need a commitment. I mean, but other than the more you show up, the better it's going to be.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more specifically like a small group or a men's group or something.
Okay,
Yeah.
And the events are. I mean, I'm all for the events. I mean, it's if you go there and you meet one person. I mean, I'm sure the amount of guys that have been invited to men's and women's groups at the parish from those events have been whatnot. Or you meet a person at an event and you go to a party. I mean, it's like it's kind of like an opportunity. I don't know. I'm sure there's some sort of cool consulting term, some opportunity metric of like the more you go, the better chance you have of like just kind of finding that thing you click with or that thing you need. And St. Albans does, and St. Albans and Clements can't just. I mean, they all provide. I mean, a ton of opportunities to do that. So.
Yeah.
And going back to something Kevin said earlier, if you're not growing in holiness, then you're doing it wrong. It's what are we? Is this just a social thing? If so, it's not good for you. Maybe we should. It's on us to change our mind and our attitude towards what we're actually there for, or to seek out maybe another community that is providing something. Maybe that's not good advice, but holiness. You need to grow in holiness.
Yeah.
Amen.
That's the goal.
That is the goal. That is the intention, or should be the intention. Cool. Well, guys, I think we killed it. Wow, my eyes watering so bad right now.
Just so touching.
Yeah.
Stop touching it. I know, but if I don't touch it, it's like.
The topic was so.
Also stop touching it.
Also stop touching it.
Yeah.
This is COVID season.
Yeah.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so bad. Okay.
No, just flash me back to that. There was a conversation on Skype that lasted for maybe 30 minutes about a blister on Mary Kate's.
Skype,
Deal?
you mean Slack. I'm so glad you brought this up.
Slack.
Thank you for that.
But I know. It just brought me back to that. I don't know why.
That was one of the most painful experiences of my life. Like I couldn't lay in bed
the conversation
without
or the
being in
actual
pain.
blister?
The blister.
Oh no, the blister, not the conversation.
Oh.
The conversation
Normally-
was pretty ridiculous.
Normally that stuff grosses me out, but it was literally it was like owning all of my brain power because I was in so much pain. I couldn't lay in bed without thinking about how bad my foot hurt or woke me up like 6 times in the middle of the night.
Asking that question on Slack though is like worse than like Googling it and going on WebMD because accidentally diagnosing yourself with cancer because you have a blister or something like that. From
Yeah,
WebMD.
some of the suggestions that people
Suggestions
made
were pretty bad. Like
were
what
like
you do is you want to pop it and lance it and then like have your dog lick it 5 times and then there's a natural healing whatever.
That's so nasty.
I think that's a true thing though.
Yeah, right.
Letting your dog lick it?
Yeah. No, that's a real thing.
That is so nasty. That's nasty.
Lazarus, man, didn't work for him, but
It did not
How's it looking?
work for him. Did
He
not
needed
work for
Christ.
him. All right. Well,
that was a strange.
that was weird. I'm so glad you brought that up, Kevin.
You're welcome. Hey, the people are going to be without us for a month, and like we got to leave them with some real good.
What a great way to
man.
end season 1.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, maybe we should talk about that a little bit. So
I'll
season.
get
this
John
is
in here
the-
to do a song and dance number or something.
Yeah.
Hey, John.
Are you?
Never mind.
Oh, John Haynes. I was like, wait, are you at the?
Alfred can go
dinner?
get John Trainer.
John Trainer.
Hey, John.
He's probably in bed already.
He won't leave the couch.
He's
Come on,
napping.
John.
Son, I'm gonna have you do a song and dance.
He's taking his pre-bedtime nap right now. Okay, wait. Well, I don't want to get Kevin in trouble, but this is really funny
Oh.
that you
I want to
accidentally
get Kevin in trouble.
commented with the.
Kevin
Oh,
in
yeah,
trouble. I vote yes.
Okay.
Let's not talk about
let's do
that. That was.
All right.
No,
we
can
won't.
we please?
I'm managing like 5 different YouTube pages right now, but for my summer assignment, and I accidentally I'm uploading to like different videos of different ones, and I accidentally left. I was on one when I commented, and I decided to delete.
Whoops.
So
Message
it wasn't anything
redacted.
bad, but like it also showed like, oh, it's I don't want to like get them in trouble. I think they're like supporting.
You
the show.
put totally outrageous, man ready, and muscular. Is that what you said with that?
Yes. Well, the comment was what It was about Zach's shirt. It was like a reverse.
Oh, I understand that you were making it
Wait,
an acronym.
what happened?
It was at one point. It said John said Zach's shirt says Tom Ram because it was like backwards. I don't know how you flipped it, but that's why I was making it an acronym. But I used the wrong account and ruined the joke. It was a very funny joke. Very good, very funny, well-landed joke. I mean,
Wow, you really thought that out.
I did, and then I blew it.
Well, that's
into
okay.
my life.
All right. Shall we pray? Can we give?
Oh, beautiful.
Well, before we pray, just give the people an idea of what our plan is.
So we have to change the night that we do this every week because apparently Mundelein has things happening on Monday nights. I don't know.
Apparently.
So we're thinking Wednesdays. Can we say that? I think. Assuming, I mean, to be honest, no night is good. Wednesdays seem to be the least bad of the 7 options. So we're going to try to make Wednesday nights work. I'm like so pumped for our all of our topics next season because we have I feel like we've done a far better job of thinking through our topics than we have for any of the topics we've done in season 1. Like, I feel like they're kind of fleshed out.
Sure.
Do you disagree?
Yeah, I'm trying to think what the topics actually are.
Okay, well, I have a list. I have them all written down. They're in the Google Doc.
And if you want to do if you ever want to send them in to we have an email account, don't we?
Yeah, but actually they can just go to the website now. The website's chicagoinquisition.com and you just fill out the contact form and it gets sent straight to my phone.
Wow. So
I send them to the guys.
Direct line to Mary.
You have a direct line.
That's
direct line. That's correct. That's true.
I can drop the hint, however, though. It's been noted that one of the upcoming episodes will be one Peter Aiura performing a liturgical dance.
For 2 whole hours.
On a motorcycle.
On a motorcycle.
On a motorcycle.
I thought you'd never ask.
Not asking.
I think it'd be fun to do a listener question, like some sort of listener question episode where I feel like we're not a real podcast unless we do something like that. Like that's a real.
Unless we do something totally self-indulgent like that.
Also,
ask us questions about ourselves.
It's not about ourselves. I mean, if you want to know facts about our lives, I mean, by all means.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, I think that's a great idea as well. I just want to have that planned, really well planned out. We got to vet the questions in advance,
Oh, that's way less fun.
Way less fun?
Live questions. We can do a call-in show. How about that?
Nice.
That's what we should do. We should get a call line that people can leave us voicemails and then we play them on the live stream and respond.
See, now we are evolving into a real podcast.
So dangerous, but has the potential to be so funny.
Yeah, you can just record a little video and ask your question to TCI.
That's true as well. You could just record a video and
You could have terrible results.
I mean, doesn't everything we try on this podcast have terrible results?
Yeah.
That's a great way to close the season. And so let's pray.
I'm probably going to name it. What should I name this episode? I don't even know.
Everything we
Young adults, terrible
results. Young adults, terrible results.
Oh, jeez.
That was good, Tim. Very nice.
Oh my gosh. Perfect. All right, who's going to close us in prayer?
I will.
Okay.
In the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit, amen. Since you were all competing for it. Heavenly Father, we give you the thanks for the opportunity to meet together tonight. Please bless us and everyone who's listening and guide us all in your spirit, especially during these difficult and turbulent times. Help us to be beacons of light and truth in this world that we live in, which so desperately seeks peace and love. We ask for the intercession of St. Lawrence and of our Heavenly Mother as we pray, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen.
When you said turbulence, it made me think of when I was flying home from DC last weekend and there was a guy behind me in the plane, and we were hitting major turbulence, and this guy was like out loud, like screaming at every lurch of the plane. And I was just like, what is happening behind me right now? This guy is having a full-blown panic. Seriously, that's literally the noises he was making. And on the one hand, I felt bad, but on the other hand, I was like, dude, pull it together. So anyway, I'm sorry.
Well, you weren't a beacon of light in his life, apparently. So
Kind of
he
Mary Kate to
screamed.
give the tough love.
He like yelled the F word at one point, and there was a kid sitting across from us, and I was like, this guy needs to get it under control.
Maybe he had Tourette's.
You took this from year to year. Okay, great.
And just to wrap this
remember
up,
the seventh graders, man. Come on.
yeah.
They got their just desserts.
Just because we're not podcasting for a month, make sure you follow us on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. We'll have some. We'll try to have some content for you and maybe some surprises. Who knows? Maybe some swag in the future.
Oh, we will have swag in the future.
Well,
Actually,
just get it done.
You said you're the one who teased it. You said
I
it.
teased it, and you're like, and then we're gonna have swag. You're like, you just ruined the tease.
I didn't say what it was. I didn't say what it was.
Okay, that's fair.
Also, I was gonna say, I think that I'm not gonna make you do it. I'm gonna request that you guys each do like. Never mind. We can talk offline about it. I want you guys to do Instagram.
Now that's a
lives with
tease.
me.
I like that. Now that's a good tease right there.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Ephrem.
So
Yeah,
good.
thanks, guys.
Bye, guys. See you later. This is awesome.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Yeah.